boom, bada bum bum, boom, bada bum bum, boom, bada bum bum, boom, bada bum 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 bum. Oh crap! I owe Disney money. Hey guys, what's up? 2-Bit Jesus here, and as you can tell by that horrible rendition that hopefully I won't be getting copyright striked on. Please, Disney. I'm going to be taking a look at a franchise I haven't looked at in a couple of years, and that is the Indiana Jones franchise. Now, as you guys remember, a couple of years ago, I reviewed a set of games, what I called the Indiana Jones trilogy of 3D games. Now, I'm not going to be taking a look at 3 games in a row today, only one game, a game that I didn't even know existed. And it was based on the TV series / movie made for TV series, The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. Now, this series starred Sean Patrick Flanery of Boondock Saints fame. Now, I really liked Boondock Saints, and I liked Boondock Saints 2, and I would like to see them round off that trilogy with the Boondock Saints 3. No, wait a minute! Focus, 2-Bit! We're here to talk about a video game, not a movie series. Anyway, so somewhere between the production of this show and the release of this show, Lucasarts decided to make a game based on this series. Today we're taking a look at Instruments of Chaos, starring young Indiana Jones. Instruments of Chaos, starring young Indiana Jones, was published and developed by Lucasarts for the Sega Genesis. It's an action-adventure game that was released June 1st, 1994. Instruments of Chaos, starring young Indiana Jones, or I'm just going to start referring to it as Instruments of Chaos because Instruments of Chaos, starring young Indiana Jones, is too long of a damn title for a video game if you ask me. So, Instruments of Chaos is based on the television series The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, which I'm guessing George Lucas was producing and working on in the early 90s to preoccupy him in between the original Star Wars trilogy and the prequel Star Wars trilogy that he would start work on in the late 90s. From the sources I found about this game, it was already in development back in 1992, a whole 2 years before the release of the game. It was also planned to be a Sega CD title, as shown in this magazine. But I'm guessing somewhere down the line, LucasArts decided to say, fuck it, and just release the game in its Sega CD-less state. Well guys, that's it for the tidbits on this title. Let's once again grab our fedora and bullwhip and review this game. Okay guys, this is probably without a doubt the worst game I've ever played when it pertains to gameplay. The hit detection is way off in this game. In some instances, I only had to be near an enemy to register a hit on Indy. On the subject of getting hit, in one level, Indy would get hit, and instead of, the standard 2 or 3 spaces a character normally gets knocked back to when they get hit, an enemy caused Indy to bounce around like a ping pong. It didn't help that the level was a tower, and a hit like that causes you to fly right off the tower and to your death unless your whip magically decides to grab onto something. And while I'm talking about the whip, its hit detection is also way off. I found that flinging it around got a lot better results than trying to be precise with it. This can be done by just holding down the whip button and either going clockwise or counterclockwise on the directional pad. Looking at the whip mechanics, I can tell the dev team put their main focus on the whip as you use it to take out the majority of the enemies and you need it to get past environmental obstacles. But the poor hit detection on the enemies and the environmental objects you must whip leaves the main hook the dev team intended for the gameplay partially broken. I just can't see how they messed up the whip mechanics so bad. I mean, Super Castlevania 4 came out before this game, and it still has the best whip mechanics of that generation, so it's not like they didn't have good examples to emulate.
All of this is possibly due to the fact that, again, this game was intended for the Sega CD, and from what I can see here, gameplay mechanics are at best in beta and not complete. Other weapons are the revolver and bombs. The revolver works well against human enemies, and the bomb works well enough on more stationary objects. The enemies are random. It's a mix of animals and human characters tailored to the theme and location of the level. Your animal enemies may be snakes, birds, tigers, flying fish, windows, giant statues, monkeys. You know, all the normal random shit you'd be testing out in a game before it's complete. The enemies will spawn erratically, and in some parts feel like they're just overwhelming you on the screen. The game feels unfinished. For example, the monkey will hound you constantly in the India levels. It can follow you anywhere. Its movements remind me a lot of the Bible adventure games from the NES. Moving on to the game's boss, and yes, I do mean that singularly. At the end of every level, Indy will have to fight a fedora-wearing German spy wrapped in a trench coat. You will always stumble upon him receiving plans from what looks like to me a failed Dr. Wily cosplay. He moves erratically on the screen like most of the other enemies in the game, so it's hard to nail down a pattern. Probably because the game is unfinished and the dev team didn't finish his moveset. The best method is to unload on him with your revolver or just waggle your whip at him until he dies. The game implements a timer as well for each level. Most levels have either 2 or 3 stages to them, but because of the broken game mechanics, it's very hard to beat these levels. One saving grace is the beginning of each stage, an ally of yours tells you exactly what you need to do to beat the stage. So at least you're not going in blind, but are heading into a broken game where it's near impossible to advance in the game, but also, thankfully, there's a thing called the Game Genie. This helped me out a lot at the later sections of the game. Why would I need to cheat, you ask? Well, simply put, with the broken gameplay mechanics and the random enemies that overwhelmingly spawn on top of you, makes it very hard to advance in this game. Also, this game is not very fun, so after 2 levels, I said fuck it, just like Lucasarts, and used the Game Genie. Speaking of level design, you can tell that the game is unfinished here as well, with some levels raining enemies down upon you and others being almost completely devoid of enemies. There are also quite a few levels that just feel like they are on repeat, London and Egypt especially, as they just use the exact same rooms repeating in the same order and pattern, and while it only took maybe 5 or 10 minutes to complete, it felt like an eternity. So, with all this tallied up, unfinished and broken game mechanics combined with unfinished level designs leaves Instruments of Chaos's gameplay with a giant steaming turd. Yeah, that's right, just a turd. No bits. Sound is possibly the high point for this game. Lucasarts, I've said in many reviews before, never disappoints with sound, and they didn't here either. The music is pretty good. It makes use of the Sega Genesis sound chip. I really like the selection they had, and they switch it up a bit with each different area you go into. The sound effects are decent too. The sounds of like the gun and the grenade, when Indy gets hit, when you hit other characters, come in through clean and crisp and have a sense of immersion and believability to their sounds. The one that doesn't, again, is the whip, which if you play this game, you can tell that that was the main focus, I think, of this game, is that whip and its mechanics. The whip sounds exactly like this. You hear that? That's me making the sound. That's exactly how the whip sounds in the game. It sounds like someone just on a microphone doing whip sounds. It is the worst whip sounds I've ever heard. Now you can go back to, say, my Indiana Jones Infernal Machine review if you want to hear a really good whip sound. That game had it. LucasArts made that game. For some reason, they couldn't do it here in Instruments of Chaos. So, with all that being said, the music being good, the sound effects being, I would say, decent to maybe mediocre, I'm going to give Instruments of Chaos's sound 1 bit out of 4. just like sound, presentation actually has some high points to it. Young Indy looks very well detailed, although no matter what location you visit, as you visit multiple locations in this game in different regions of the world, he's always wearing the same outfit. You think when he goes to a cold place like, say, Tibet, he would have a nice warm jacket on him, but instead, he's just still wearing the same blue shirt and black vest. The enemies as well look very well detailed. That's one positive I can say about this game is the sprites in the game, and even the backgrounds of the levels look really awesome and well detailed, but I also feel like what it could have been, because this originally was going to be a Sega CD game. So there's animations there, missing animations in the characters, and I would even say background, that I know are missing that the Sega CD would have had. One really cool animation though is when you unload your revolver on someone or something, Indiana will do a cool little animation where he blows the smoke off of his gun and puts it back in his holster. Like a true Indiana Jones movie, Instruments of Chaos takes you on a globe-spanning adventure. You go from Tibet to India to Egypt to England and then finally to Germany. And every level has its own unique look to it. You really feel like you're going to different locations, albeit, like I said earlier, Indiana Jones always seems to wear the same outfit to every location, no matter the climate change. The one sad part about this, and going back to this once again, is that this game is clearly in beta form, it's unfinished, and so large portions of all these levels are very empty. There's not a whole lot of enemies there, or obstacles, or platforming, and you feel like you're only playing a game that is 60 to 75% done. The story to Instruments of Chaos isn't an Indiana Jones-like story at all. There's no occult, and there's no archaeology really going on, or discovering something ancient. Young Indiana Jones is a spy for the Allies during World War I. Indiana Jones is sent around the world to stop German agents from acquiring technology that will give them the upper hand in the war. And the technologies you're stopping them from acquiring, from what I remember, they already had. Like the flamethrower, or mustard gas, or a machine gun. It's only a half-baked idea, and I feel like the plot could have been better. The crescendo to the game is the last level where you're in Germany and you have to take down a Zeppelin. Once Indiana Jones is successful in taking down the Zeppelin, the Allies congratulate him in helping them bring down the German war machine and tell him to hurry home to a country that is waiting to celebrate with him. Problem being, I think that they never really tell you what year this takes place in, so it could be anywhere from 1914 to 1918, and I don't think preventing the Germans from getting a flamethrower or mustard gas or a machine gun or taking down one of their Zeppelins would completely halt the German war machine and end the war, but according to Instruments of Chaos, Indiana Jones single-handedly ended World War I. And with that, you're treated to a credit scene with a pretty cool looking Zeppelin in flames. It reminds me a little bit of the art style from Full Throttle. So in summation, the presentation is actually decent. The characters and environments are very well detailed, though very empty because the game is left unfinished. So there's a lot there that I know is missing. That, knowing that it was supposed to be a Sega CD game, I can't help but feel that maybe we would have had some FMV cutscenes, or some extra animations, or even, dare I say, because with a CD you could hold more room than a cart, dare I say, extra levels to play. I just feel that there's a lot missing here. And so my final tally for Instrument of Chaos's presentation is 1 bit out of 4.
Wow, that is without a doubt the worst game I've ever reviewed, even if you want to call it a game, because I don't even know if it's a game. What the hell, Lucasarts? You've given us Monkey Island, you've given us Grim Fandango, you've given us Full Throttle, Dark Forces 2, Jedi Knight, some of the greatest games I've ever had the privilege to play. And yet, you create this giant turd. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't LucasArts' fault.
maybe it was on Sega's end, because, you know, back then, Sega had a habit of coming out with add-ons and not supporting them, so they're like, hey, Sega CD, Sega 32X, so maybe LucasArts, somewhere in developing this game, saw that and like, well crap, they're about to drop the Sega CD anyway, why are we creating this game? Let's just ship it out even though it's in beta form. By the way, this game is not complete, it's in beta. That's obvious. So they're like, let's ship it out even though it's not finished, and let's just slap it into a Sega Genesis cart and try to recoup our money, you know, because Sega's obviously dropping this add-on and moving on. Maybe that happened, or just maybe they ran out of money and time to work on the game, so they're like, fuck it, throw it in a cart, ship it out, let's try to make some money. I mean, I'm open to possibilities here, but ultimately, folks, my job is not to find out what went wrong with this game, it's to review it. So my final verdict for Instruments of Chaos starring young Indiana Jones is a strong, and I mean strong, pass for the casual and hardcore collector of the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive. But you know what? You know what I do recommend? If you ever run across this game in the wild or you see it online, destroy it immediately. It'll cost you around 6 to 12 bucks depending on its condition, but trust me, it's well worth it, and you're doing society a service by getting this game and destroying it and erasing it from the history books of video games, because it just does not belong in this world. Well guys, that's it for me for this month, and I pray to the almighty Jesus horse that next month's game is a lot better than this torturous piece of shit game I had to play this month. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm 2-Bit Jesus signing out, saying stay safe and play on.